Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and today I want to talk about some of the newly released, leaked Andor Season 2 trailers that have come out. I know a lot of people are talking about the Mandalorian film trailer that was also leaked recently. That's going to be awesome. I'm sure that movie is going to be great, but Andor has always been my favorite show, especially in the recent Disney Plus streaming era. I don't really think any other show is going to top it for me. I reached that conclusion after rewatching it again. It's just mind-blowing how much effort they put into every aspect of the show compared to the usual Disney Plus fare. I mean, even compared to The Mandalorian, which is also at a different level, but still not even close to Andor, especially after the third season released. No show can really come close to Andor's quality of writing and development of characters, the complexity of themes and plot lines. It truly raised Star Wars to the next level. Now, obviously, that's just my opinion, and, opinions don't really mean much. Because, unfortunately, Andor has the worst ratings of any Star Wars show that's come out, even worse than the very controversial Acolyte series. And obviously, there are a lot of different factors on why this happened. Andor was released without much fanfare or marketing. It was also released while The Rings of Power and The House of Dragon were both mid-season or released already. So there was a lot of competition, but there's more to why this show wasn't popular. And, to understand this, I have to be a bit more objective. Just because I like something a lot doesn't mean that everyone else will agree with me. As a matter of fact, I've learned over the time that's usually the case. My opinions are quite special, to put it nicely. My original concern with Andor, believe it or not, was that it was going to be a longer show. They had planned to make this 5 seasons, 1 season for each year that leads up to Rogue One. And reportedly, Disney seemed okay with all this. I mean, they were pretty hands-off, uncharacteristically, with Tony Gilroy. I guess they just trusted him. But Andor took a lot of work. I mean, this show was in production and pre-production for a much longer time than shows like Kenobi, Book of Boba Fett, and even Ahsoka. There's also the COVID restrictions during the time when they were shooting it, which I'm sure made shooting this show a lot more difficult, tiring, challenging. They probably had to limit how much production staff and individuals you could have on camera. It probably just cost more to do everything. And one gets a sense at the end of it all, Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna, who plays Cassian Andor and also produced, were just completely beat and tired of this show. Which is when they kind of retracted this idea of making 5 seasons. And that's when I kind of got concerned, how are you going to squeeze 4 seasons of content into 1 season? That usually is a mistake. And honestly, after Andor ended, leaving a huge hole in my life, I was just utterly disappointed we weren't going to be getting 4 more seasons of this amazing content. It's one thing to just announce there are only going to be 2 seasons, but to say that potentially there was 5 and then take that away from you, I mean, it's cruel. It's really cruel. Now, granted, I wasn't upset at Tony or Diego. I understand that they have lives and they don't want to spend the next decade doing the same show over and over again. But again, I am worried about how rushed things would become. But then I really thought about it. Andor failed from a ratings point of view, and that matters a lot to Disney. I mean, hopefully it has stronger viewership in the years or so since it's been released. I think the metrics do show that a lot of people have been watching Andor on Disney+. But it's also clear that not everyone enjoyed it or were interested by this show. And I also do understand to a certain degree the detractors who say that this show is a bit too slow and boring. I mean, if you take a look at Tony Gilroy's Michael Clayton or his Bourne series even, these aren't exactly everyone's cup of tea. I wouldn't say that these films are complex cinema by any means, but they're less accessible than the Star Wars franchises. Star Wars was designed for a different audience, a younger, more entertainment-focused group. The original Star Wars films weren't known for its dialogue or character building. It was all about special effects and the amazing epic story about a clash amongst the stars. This was a space opera. Andor, with its muted color palettes and tense but realistic action and believable but less flashy characters, lack of lightsabers, and the Force, is designed for a more mature audience. If you don't like dialogue and monologues that are designed to kind of talk about bigger picture ideas, I get it. It's not for everyone. I mean, sometimes you just want to kick back and relax. But after seeing the leaked trailers for the second season of Andor, I gotta say I'm pleasantly surprised by what they've done, and I'm starting to understand why they did this. Instead of giving us 4 years of really great stories and character building, the novel version of the story, they're going to be giving us the bigger highlights of those 4 years, an abbreviated tale of how the rebellion rises. I wouldn't say it's exactly a comic, but it's definitely not as heavy as a novel would be. And usually I'd be worried about this kind of condensing.
One thing's for sure, we're all going to be a lot thinner.
But I feel like Tony Gilroy is going to be able to pull this off, because this is what Andor does quite well. You look at the first season, that's basically what they did. It was really just 4 individual storylines interwoven together, with Cassian Andor being the vehicle. We go from Ferrex, the awakening of Cassian.
Question is, how much time do we have to get out of here?
Why would I go anywhere with you?
Don't you want to fight these bastards for real?
To the heist on Aldhani.
Climb! Move! Climb! Now!
The awakening of the Empire.
I want every star sector and planetary emergency retaliation plan in the building ready for presentation by midnight.
And then Arcana 5, Andor's first true rebellion.
There are 5,000 of us. If we can fight half as hard as we've been working, we will be home in no time. One way out.
Followed by the finale. They did a really good job, I think, structuring these 3-episode arcs in the first season. I know a lot of people didn't like it. They felt like the second build-up episode in each series was a bit slow, but that's just, that's just how things play out when you have weekly releases. That's another discussion for another day, but in general, the time skips were pretty well done, and it felt like we were watching almost 3 or 4 individual movies, which I really like. The next season of Andor, judging by the trailers, is probably going to be split up in a very similar way, and we're just going to see a larger time gap probably in between each episode. Spoilers ahead. We're going to be seeing the return of a lot of characters, and they're going to have new outfits, new hairstyles, all of that kind of good stuff. And Andor has recruited many of his friends on Ferrex, along with some of the prisoners on Arcana 5, into the rebellion, it seems. A lot of people probably recognize Melshi from the original Rogue One film and Andor in the Arcana 5 arc. William Pock, whose father, Colin Kaepernick, was tortured and executed by the ISB after refusing to give up information about rebel activities on the planet. Willman was the kid who threw that improvised explosive at Marva's funeral procession. Bro was a little bit hectic. I mean, he was also very young and grieving when he did this, but that was still kind of an insane move on his part. There were like a lot of civilians in the area, and that explosive ends up setting off a crate of explosives. And that's also what caused the Empire to start firing into the crowd, killing a lot of people. So no going back home for him, ever, Willman looks a lot older now and more clean cut. Hopefully he's learned from his past mistakes, and he'll be a valuable asset for the rebellion. We also see Ham, who was in Andor's prison crew. He didn't really say much, ever. But it seems like he's not really done with fighting against the Empire. Cyril Karn is also back with longer hair. It seems like he's kept his job in the Bureau of Statistics for now, but he does cut his hair in one of the scenes, which seems to indicate that he will maybe be joining up with the ISB or the Empire in order to fight against these rebels. After all, he did save Dedra Meero, and he still might have that connection with her.
I should say thank you. You don't have to.
Dedra Meero, by the way, still seems to be in the ISB despite her screwing up the Ferrex situation. I'm guessing she has been punished, though. Maybe she's been demoted to a lower position. Saw Gerrera's back as well. His hair is a lot longer than how we see him in Andor Season 1. He looks almost like his Rogue One version of himself. We do see a terrorist attack in one of the scenes in what looks like Coruscant. I'm guessing Saw Gerrera is going to be involved somehow. Blowing something on Coruscant doesn't really seem like Andor and Luthen Rael and Mon Mothma's MO. That seems like something the partisans would be involved with. Saw Gerrera is probably getting less and less stable by this time, and the divide between him and Mon Mothma's faction of the rebellion will start to be more noticeable as well.
Across the galaxy, your people suffer while the leaders of this rebellion refuse to act.
So long as our allies in the Senate have hope of a peaceful resolution to this conflict, I will not risk...
If you continue to allow this war to be fought on the Empire's terms, not yours, you are going to lose.
I mean, I think it's even possible that he might serve as another antagonist or opposition force in this story.
You target civilians! Kill those who surrender! Break every rule of engagement! If we degrade ourselves to the Empire's level, what will we become?
There she is!
We also see the return of Ben Mendelsohn as Orson Krennic, which really does help connect the show to Rogue One, which is where Cassian's story ends. Krennic was the director of Project Stardust. He was the individual who was in charge of wrangling Galen Erso into the program. Galen Erso is a brilliant crystallographer and the key designer of the Death Star's main weapon, and he really just wants no part of the project once he realized what it actually was for. Krennic is kind of like this Elon Musk type figure, whereas he has some basic technical knowledge, but what he's much better at is organizing and managing other people.
They have nothing to do with it. Spare them.
Krennic is extremely ruthless when he needs to be. I imagine his presence means that somewhere in the middle or even end of the show, the rebellion will find out about the Death Star project and start looking for its plan. Andor Season 2 looks bigger, brighter, and more beautiful than the first season. I feel like we're going to be seeing some of the most beautiful shots of Coruscant we've seen so far in all of Star Wars. There's this production shot of the TIE Interceptor, I believe, which also looks terrific. Andor is known for using practical sets and on-location shots, and visually, it's definitely one of the better Star Wars series of late, even with the muted color palette, which I think is purposely made to show the austerity and oppression of the Empire more than anything. The first season was still very visually memorable, and tied into the themes of the Empire very well. As things get bigger and bolder in the second season, I think the stakes for what's happening on screen will also go up significantly. I mean, this show will finally explain to us why it exists. This is supposed to be the tale of the rise of the rebellion, which is probably what they should have named this in the first place, because Andor is clearly not the central focus. He's just the vehicle we ride along in. I also feel like a lot of individuals are going to die in the second season, including maybe some fan favorites. Because if you remember in Rogue One, everyone dies in that show, and that's kind of the vibe we get from Andor. Everyone is expendable. Oh, and Alan Tudyk is also going to be back as K2SO. I don't know if you guys could tell, but Andor is really just one of my favorite shows in all of Star Wars. The first season really kind of brought me back into the franchise, made me fall in love with Star Wars all over again. And just talking about the second season, even though it's like months away from releasing and on the other side of Skeleton Crew, I'm just super excited. I hope Andor this time around will be a lot more popular because of word of mouth. If you haven't seen the first season of Andor, this is really the only show I heavily recommend to people, other than The Mandalorian in the Disneyverse so far. I would say that it's probably the best show on the Disney platform right now, and probably will stay that way for quite some time. So that's all we have for you guys today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. I'm going to be covering Andor a lot more as we get closer to the release of the show, and I'm also thinking about doing a Rise of the Empire history series, kind of like how we did it with the Clone Wars history series. This will cover the early Empire and eventually move on to when the Andor series takes place, hopefully. Let me know in the comment section below if you guys would be interested in something like that. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.